Hi, it's Chapter 51, The Mysterious Process. The Tao produces, virtue nurtures, substance gives form, circumstance complete. Thus everything in creation reveres the Tao and honors virtue. Reverence for the Tao and honor for virtue are not observed by command. It is the eternal natural way. The Tao produces and virtue nurtures, raises, educates, shelters, heals, feeds, and protects. Producing without owning, doing without claiming credit, rearing but not slaughtering. This is the mystery of virtue. Chapter 52, Understanding the Infinite. The world had its origin in the Tao, which may be considered as its mother. By knowing the mother, you can know the child. By knowing the child, you cherish the mother the more, and even death holds no fear. Close your eyes and ears to the sights and sounds of the world, and your life will be easy. Open your mouth and meddle with affairs, and life will be a perpetual struggle. To recognize the importance of the small is called clarity. To nurture the weak is called strength. Use the illumination of the Tao to find clarity and avoid harm. This is to understand the infinite. Chapter 53, The Winding Byways. Should I suddenly find myself in a position to govern according to the Tao, I would only have one cause for concern. The Tao is straight and easy, but people prefer the winding byways. The courtyards of their mansions may be fine and well kept, but the fields are untilled, and the granaries empty. They wear fine clothes, carry sharp swords, gorge themselves on food and drink, hoard their extravagant possessions, but this just makes them thieves and plunderers. This is most assuredly not in accord with the Tao. It is interesting to me that it states that the Tao is straight and easy, but I find it extremely difficult not to do things. Like the do nothing mentality or not doing mentality of the Tao, or at least a person who would practice the Tao properly, who would just go with the flow. A lot of times that's more difficult to do. You might think that, well, it's, if you're a lazy person, then doing nothing is super easy. But the thing about the Tao is that it's not really about laziness. It's just, sometimes it's just difficult to stay out of affairs that you feel are doing something bad, or possibly maybe would result in a friend or a family member failing, and you don't want to see them fail. Or maybe even in your own failure. You don't want to fail in your own life, and so it's difficult not to intervene. And even a lazy person, again, the Tao is not really about laziness, but even if you were to argue that it is, even a lazy person would have a hard time not doing something to avoid catastrophe, at the very least for themselves. So it's very odd to me that it's suddenly referring to the Tao as easy, when not acting and not doing can be extremely difficult things to do, to stay the course of allowing something to happen as opposed to interfering or intervening. At any rate, moving on, Chapter 54, Cultivating Virtue. What is well-founded cannot be uprooted. What is well-protected cannot be torn away. Sons and grandsons maintain the ancestral rights. If the Tao is cultivated by an individual, his virtue is constant. If it is cultivated in a household, its virtue overflows. If it is cultivated in a village, its virtue is long-lasting. If it is cultivated in a state, its virtue will flourish. If it is cultivated in the world, its virtue is universal. Thus an individual should be judged as an individual, a household as a household, a village as a village, a state as a state, and the world as the world. How can I know this about the world? From the process I have just described. Sounds a little bit like a priori, I believe. This idea that you know a process without experience because it is readily apparent. It's just obvious. You don't have to have experience to know that it's true. You just do. It's like a almost intuitive kind of thing. Chapter 55, Purity of the Newborn. We should measure our virtue against that of a newborn child. Neither hornets nor scorpions nor snakes will sting an infant. Is that true? Savage beasts will not attack it. I know that's not true. Birds of prey will not swoop on it. Its bones and sinews are soft, but its grip is strong. It has no knowledge of sexual union, but its penis is already primed. Because of the purity of its physical essence, it can cry all day but not go hoarse. Because of its physical harmony, to know harmony is called constancy. To know constancy is called clarity. But self-indulgence may be called ill-omened, and willfulness may be called overbearing. For things taken to the extreme will then decline, and this is not in accord with the Tao. What is not in accord with the Tao soon withers and dies. So, obviously, my personal take on this chapter is that there's quite a bit wrong with it. There are plenty of wild animals that would attack a newborn. There are plenty of things that can happen to a child that, like, nature, it's... At times, nature might care for something that it perceives to be childlike, but a lot of times, not so much. And as far as the no knowledge of sexual union, but penis is already primed, I'm not sure I necessarily like that implication, because it almost seems to be saying, because the idea of this chapter is purity. And how pure newborns are. They're so pure that even wild animals won't attack them, which of course is false. And it has no knowledge of sexual union, which seems to imply that if it did, it wouldn't be as pure, that something about sex is impure. But its penis is already primed, as in an erection? Is that what they're referring to? That the erection is not impure, but sexual acts are? I'm not sure what the point of this is, other than to say that newborns are without some sort of impurity. But that's strictly from a human standpoint, and yet there's a lot of references here to things that are not human, as if the person who wrote this was speaking from a perspective of something other than human, which of course doesn't make much sense to me. Yeah, not really sure what to say about that, aside from I think that this chapter is just straight up wrong on a lot of things, and the places that it's not wrong are the places that it's weird. Oh well, to each their own, I guess. Anyway, chapter 56, Honoring the Tao. A wise man speaks little. I actually don't know this word. A garrulous. Garrulous? Is that right? A garrulous man is not wise. Block the openings, shut the doors, blunt the edges, loosen the knots, soften the glare, settle the dust. This is the mysterious unity. The Tao brings neither closeness nor separation, neither profit nor harm, neither honor nor disgrace. For this reason, it is honored above all other things. I'm actually going to look up what that means, that word, 1 second. Okay. A garrulous is somebody who excessively talks and rambles on and on. I suppose I could have gotten that from context clues, but anyway, moving on. Chapter 57. The benefits of simplicity. Be orthodox in governing the state. It seems like we have another politically charged chapter here. But unorthodox in war. Oh, well, Machiavelli would approve of this chapter. Win the world by being uninvolved. Okay, never mind. Machiavelli would not approve of this chapter. How do I know this? By this. The more restrictions that are placed on the empire, the poorer the people become. Okay, Machiavelli would approve. The better the weapons the people carry, the more disordered the state. The more skillful the craftsmen, the more devious and pernicious their products. The more intrusive the legal system, the more thieves and robbers you'll find. Thus the enlightened man says, I practice non-action. So there's actually quite a few political things in here. So being unorthodox and less restrictions on the empire, that's, as I mentioned, the Machiavellianism. The poorer the people come, the better the weapons the people carry, the more disordered the state. So that's kind of like your... American, what is it, the Second Amendment to the Constitution, the right to bear arms, that kind of idea. You arm the people, and so therefore everybody is technically a member of the military, or at least some kind of militia member. And then the more intrusive the legal system, the more thieves and robbers you'll find. So that's more libertarian. So it goes all over the place. It goes from like tyrannical authoritarianism to more republic, democracy, to then militia, to then libertarianism. It's all over the place. Anyways, we're not quite done with the chapter. I practice non-action, and the people will transform themselves. I embrace tranquility, and the people will order themselves. I remain uninvolved, and the people will prosper. I keep myself free from desire, and the people will find simplicity. Okay. Chapter 58, sharp but not dangerous. If government is subdued, the people will be honest. If government is obtrusive, the people will be discontent. Misery and happiness are interdependent, and one hides behind the other. Who knows their limits? Without the orthodox, the unorthodox takes over, and good turns to bad. This befuddles the people with enduring confusion. So the enlightened man stands foursquare without causing harm, is sharp but not dangerous, is straight but does not overextend, shines but does not dazzle. I don't know if I necessarily agree with this either. This is another, part of it I do. If the government is subdued, the people will be honest. I agree with that part. Misery and happiness are interdependent. I suppose that could also be true. Without orthodoxy, the unorthodox takes over, obviously. But down towards the bottom, where it starts saying, the enlightened man is sharp but not dangerous. Well, that's just another way of saying that you're all bark and no bite. You do have to do something every once in a while to prove that you're not just all talk. It doesn't mean that you have to fight. It doesn't mean that you have to be violent. But you do have to prove that you're not just talk, that you will take action. And sharp but not dangerous, I don't know if that, in this context, this is the confusing part to me. In this context, sharp but not dangerous, if you take it literally, it would mean that you're clever, but you're not going to harm anyone, which I could get on board with that. But if you're taking it more figuratively, it becomes this thing where you're talking about, you would have to define what dangerous means. And to some people, dangerous could be an ideological sort of danger. And so you are sharp as in intelligent, but you don't present any ideological danger to anyone, which sounds nice. So, on the surface level, you might say like, well, that sounds like a nice person. But if some people consider, let's say there are people who consider democracy dangerous, how can you not be dangerous? You would then have to just pretend to like tyranny in order to not be dangerous in that environment. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Let's move on. Chapter 59 is thrift. In governing the people and serving heaven, nothing compares to thrift. It is only by thrift that one can be prepared. In being prepared, one accumulates virtue. By accumulating virtue, every obstacle is overcome. In overcoming every obstacle, all limits are removed. Knowing no limits, one may attain the empire. In being the foundation of the empire, one may endure. This is known as having deep roots and a sturdy trunk. It is the enduring and visionary Tao. Chapter 60. Doing no harm. Governing the state is like cooking a small fish. When the Tao orders the world, the spirits do not manifest themselves. It is not just that they do not manifest themselves, but that they will do no harm. It is not just that the spirits will do no harm. The enlightened man will also do no harm. When neither does harm, virtue is able to expand. So once again, we come to this, it feels like it's easy on the surface, but the deeper understanding of this is more difficult to hammer down, because on the surface level, doing no harm is obviously straightforward. It sounds like it's a good idea. It sounds like you shouldn't. A good person wouldn't try to. But some people are absurdist. Some people have a twisted and distorted view of reality, and their version of harm is different than yours. How can you possibly do no harm to all people at all times? You would only ever be able to do no harm to people who think like you do, because you agree on what harm even means. Maybe I'm thinking about it too much again. At any rate, next time we'll start with chapter 61, and I hope that everybody who's listening is doing well.